Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. I'm Rhonda Hagerman. I write fiction and nonfiction.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Christina Catane, and I write Christian fiction as well as other genres.
And I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate every time you guys tune in. If you do like what we're doing here on the podcast, why don't you subscribe down below? Hit the like button or whatever it's called, and you just subscribe, right? And then if you see that little, it looks like a little bell. If you click that, every time we go live, every time we upload a video, you'll get notified. So you won't miss a single second of the fun and hilarity that we have going on here. So speaking
it's
of
like
fun and
watching
hilarity,
a train wreck, right?
Yeah. This morning, it kind of did feel like that, didn't
Oh,
it?
man.
We had a rough this morning, but anyway, Rhonda, you are our awesome hostess today. So what do we got going on?
Well, let's talk about what's going on in our lives. What was your morning like, Jen? Was it not fun?
Go with someone else first, because I'm trying to get our Twitter going, and then sorry.
All right, Tina, how was your morning or week, or how have you been?
Well, I feel like this could be the week that all dystopian writers dream of.
Oh.
Because it's one of those truth is stranger than fiction kind of weeks.
Okay, so first of all, say where you live.
I live in Michigan, and we are currently in a state of emergency. The governor declared a state of emergency because it is so cold. And really, they were predicting 40 and 50 below zero wind chill kind of stuff. The kids have been out of school all week. There's been no school. So then yesterday morning, a compressor for the natural gas for our utility company, a station in Macomb County, caught on fire. And they had to shut it down. And so now there's like a possible gas shortage. And so they actually, those emergency alert tests that you see all the time when they say this is a test. If this was not a test, well, they sent one out last night at 10:30 p.m. and the first words were, "This is not a test." Telling everybody to turn their heat down to 65 because they were going to have gas shortages if everybody didn't do this. So, and I think between 80 and 90% of our electricity is powered by natural gas. So if they run out of natural gas, then the electricity would probably also be affected. And I just can see like the great beginning of a dystopian novel happening right before our eyes. So I'm excited.
Wow.
You're keeping a journal.
And cold.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on in sunny Michigan.
So Jamie, tell us about Florida. Why don't you?
Oh, no, I can't do that to you. Although I do have to say, I feel like I have like sympathy coldness. You know how like if a wife is pregnant, the husband will gain 30 pounds or whatever but I'm so worried about everybody up there. I'm telling you, I feel so cold just even thinking about it. I guess because I grew up there and I know what that feels like, that cold, it kind of gets in your bones. And then once your feet are cold, you got to go soak them in hot water to warm them up. So basically, I've been spending a lot of this morning checking on loved ones just to make sure, which of course is irritating because you all are fine. You all know how to like do cold weather. That's why you live there. And I know because I used to live there, but it's a different feeling when you have no control, right? You feel like it's completely so far away. So I'm not irritating my friends by checking on them to see if they're okay. My oldest daughter, on another note, got her learner's license here in Florida this week, which is amazing. And so I'm so jealous. And so is my husband because she actually got a little hard printed out license that says learner's license on it. I got a piece of paper when I got my learner's permit. Isn't that what you all got too?
Yeah.
And according to what did Chris get, Tina?
Piece of paper. He just got his last week in Michigan, and he got a little folded piece of paper.
Yes, and thankfully, I'm not as ditzy as I am, but I had a moment of clarity and restraint, and I did not take a picture of it and like post it for everybody because I'm like, look at this thing, it's like a real, you know what I mean? But I knew obviously for identity safety stuff, I shouldn't be posting that everywhere. But anyway, so that's been really cool. And, I drug my other kids over to Orlando and they're starting diving lessons, like high diving. And so that's all been really fun and exciting here. So yeah, that's it for me. What's up with
Poor
you?
babies.
I know, right?
Getting drugged to Orlando.
What's up with you, Rhonda?
Well, let's hear about Jen. I'm so
All
excited
right.
to hear about her morning.
Oh, my morning was fine. It's just, like our first world problems, right? So like we prayed before we started this, and I prayed for like, thank you, Lord, that we're having tech issues because it means we have technology and things like
Amen.
that.
Yeah.
But so it's just things like that. It's not a big deal. My downstairs, we have a pellet furnace like to heat the basement, and I was just having issues with that, and it's all good. I really want to talk about something that happened last night. I finally uploaded my book to both Amazon and to Ingram Spark.
Yay!
100% towards publication, and I'm so excited.
That's so exciting.
I know, I'm waiting for the approval to come back from them. Also, today, and just as soon as we're done with this podcast, I am doing my cover reveal. So I've been promoting that all week that it's coming, so everyone can see for the first time searching for Anna's cover. And I was hoping today to be able to say when the release date is, but I'm a little nervous until I actually get the word from Amazon and Ingram Spark saying that, yes, your book is approved and it's fine. I know there's not going to be any issues with it, but at the same time, it's like I'm just kind of a little nervous. So
right, because you don't want to make an announcement and then have to backpedal it. Better to just wait. Yeah.
But I've already promised the book reveal today, so I wanted them to coincide, but they just may not. So it's all good; it'll be fine. But it's just very exciting how things are moving, and I'm just super excited about that. So I'm focusing on that, ignoring like all the issues I've had this morning. So. How about you, Rhonda? How's your day going?
Well, my day's going fine. Okay, so we just spent 11 days in Florida. We like to call it the buy 10 days, get one free, because on Monday, with all of the weather happening up here in Michigan, our flight was canceled. And so we didn't come home Monday, we came home Tuesday. So, I mean, we struggled with that. Wanted our toes in the snow, but had to deal with the sand on Monday. But we dealt, and we're home now. And
well, luckily for you, you guys weren't like in a situation like others. Like you were not in a hotel or something, and they had to find something to stay. You were with family, right? So.
Yeah, if this ever happened, as much as we fly, it's kind of surprising. We've never been delayed or anything before, and for this to happen to us, it was really the best of all circumstances. So it was just fine. Didn't miss my puppy. But,
if you have to be stranded, no better place, right? So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So anyway, glad to be back home, not leaving the house for a few days, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
So, but getting back to writing.
I haven't left the house since Sunday. Just saying. Like we knew there was a storm coming, so we bought a bunch of groceries, or whatever, and like I've just seen no reason to leave.
Yeah.
I was stranded in Minneapolis one time during a blizzard. And luckily, my cousin lives 10 minutes from the airport, and he took me to the Mall of America, and we're the only people there. The Mall of America was literally empty.
Now, see, that sounds like the stuff of a dystopian novel, like surviving in the Mall of America.
Right.
Dystopian novel, to me, that's a fantasy.
It's like the plot line of a 1980s John Hughes movie or something.
Yes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on, ladies. Okay, this week we're going to talk about editing. We're going to talk about self-editing and planning your process. So I am new to fiction writing, so I've never been through the editing process. I have an editing system for nonfiction, which basically is just, I go over it about 3 times, and I've got a program I use Pro Writing Aid, and I put it in there as soon as I get my second draft done, and then I make final edits from there. But for fiction, for some reason, I'm a little confused about this. So this podcast is for me, as well as anybody else who needs help with editing. So, Jen, would you like to start?
Sure, I do have a process, and I've talked about it a little bit, I think, before, but never gone into detail about it. So when I'm writing, and we talked about this before, the whole, if I'm writing it and I'm in a flow, I don't stop to research. I don't stop to, like, if I can't think of the right word, I just put a bunch of capital X's in there. And we talk about that. So when we are at writing retreats or when we are sharing our writing with each other, if I get to one of those points that what I'm sharing, I do this. So if you've ever watched a podcast and you've seen it, that's exactly why that is. It's because I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what's going to go there.
Or sometimes she'll just write like that so if she wants a character to have an emotion, she'll put like sadly, but like in giant capital letters.
Yeah.
So she'll know to go and put in something that means sadly, but isn't an LY word or something. So what's really funny is in last week's postcast, she forgot to like take one of those out. And it was so hilarious because all of a sudden it was all caps, Grant said angrily or something. And we
He was down in the dumps.
Yeah,
That was it. Down in the dump.
She was trying. She knew she wanted to be more artful than down in the dumps, but since she couldn't think of it in that moment, she didn't let it slow her down. She just wrote down in the dumps in capitals so she would catch her eye to fix it later. Right, Jen?
Right, because I don't think that down in the dumps would be period proper. Like, I think that it would not be something that they would have said in the 1920s. So maybe. So I did that. So I will go back and research that later. Because when I first started writing, I found myself stopping in the writing and going and research, and then you can get so lost in research because I do love it. I enjoy that. So the first draft is I get the story written. And then my second step of self-editing is I walk away. A minimum of 30 days. You have to walk away from your writing because you think that there are things written there, but there's not. Or you think that you've said something a certain way, and even though you read through it, in your mind, you're processing it the way you think is there. So you need a good 30 days to let it kind of simmer, is kind of what I say. So I walk away from 30 days, and in that time period, I'm writing something else, and I'm probably outlining the next thing that I'm going to write, because I know what the storyline is. So I can write the next installment, the next issue or whatever, the next novel, even though this isn't polished. So then after 30 days, the next thing I do is I go back and I look for the all caps and I look for all the X's and I fix those. I go through, I read it to myself. And when I get to those things, I stop. So when I'm writing it, I don't stop for those. I just keep going with the story. When I'm going through the first edit, I stop. Even if it takes me a whole day to research what would they have said instead of down in the dumps, or what street would have been most likely they would have had a parade on in 1926, like the street name. So that I stop no matter how long it takes. I fix it. I go in order and I fix those things. And then I put it aside for like at least a week. Now, meanwhile, I'm doing other things. I don't just stop my writing. So please, please, please continue to write. Keep your brain glowing. So then my third step is then I go back through and I've already read it a couple times, like the first time I wrote it and then I read it the second time. The next time I go through is I have the computer read it to me. Because you will hear things in the computer. I know it's boring to listen to it that way, but you'll hear things that are mistakes that you would not hear yourself reading it. For example, I get breathe and breath. I don't get them confused, but I will write the wrong one all the time. But when I read it to myself, I read it correctly. Does that make sense? So like, I think that breath is there and I've actually typed breathe. And no matter how many times I read it, and I know how to spell it, no matter how many times I read it as breathe, or I read it as the wrong one. The computer will not read it wrong. They'll read it to you correctly. The other thing that's super cool about having the computer read it to you is that commas, periods, it's pauses for commas and it full stops for periods. And so you start to feel the beat of your writing. And when you have a mistake, you hear it. So for example, if I was to say, I don't think that's true, Phoebe. If you don't have the comma after true, it goes, I don't think that's true, Phoebe. It doesn't feel right. But when the computer reads it, I don't think that's true, Phoebe. Like, it sounds right. So that will help if you struggle with commas and periods. That will help you as well. Now, to do this, if you because I write in Scrivener, I will compile it as a Microsoft Word document, and Microsoft Word has it embedded into it where it can read to you.
Tina, did you have something to say? You kind of put your hand up.
No, I was just identifying with people that struggle with commas.
Oh. And then if you don't have Microsoft Word, you can compile it as a PDF and then go into, I know Microsoft Edge for sure has it built in. You can read PDFs on Microsoft Edge, and they have a built-in where it'll read to you the document. So you don't have to pay money to do this. So after I've done that, my final stage before it goes off to the editor is I read it aloud to someone else. Now I'm lucky.
Okay, so can we stop right here? Because what you just said is before you send it to an editor. So I think it's very important for anyone who is new not to think they can just bang out their rough draft and ship it off to an editor. And why would you think? I have an answer that I think, but why would you think you would want to do all of that before sending out? Isn't that what an editor is for?
Money.
Right.
Because
Editing is expensive.
it is expensive, and the more crap you send, the more expensive it's going to be for you, because your editor is either going to charge you by the page, or they're going to charge you by the words, or they're going to charge you by their time. And either way, like if you have not edited, you're probably sending too many words. Let's be honest. We all know that when we edit, we usually cut things out that are unnecessary, and so that would lower your page reads too. But also, like for me, because I am at a stage where I'm not paying for an editor right now, only because I have somebody in my life that is like an editor that is also a writer, and I'm also an editor at heart.
So you're going to swap.
So we're swapping. Like Jamie said, do not skip this stage. You need to have somebody else edit for you. You need to have a professional editor. And when I say professional, I mean not your your child, unless they are like really gifted at it. But find somebody else, an old high school English teacher that you're still close with, or somebody that really knows the English language. At the very least, I think paying for an editor is one of the best things you can do. But if you can't do that, find somebody. If you can find somebody, there's often people in the writing community that would be willing to trade. Maybe you have a skill set they don't. Maybe you are good at Photoshop and can create a bunch of
marketing materials.
Thank you. Like for Twitter or for cover reveals. I don't even think I mentioned I did cover reveal this week. Anyway, that kind of stuff takes time, and it would cost you a lot of money. So if you have that skill set, you could trade it for editing. There's all kinds of things that you can do, but you need to have your work edited.
Yeah. So anyway, you had one more step. You said you read it out loud, I think, to your husband, right?
To my husband. If you don't have that, I would suggest you still read it out loud to your dog, whatever, and maybe record it so that you can hear yourself. But you'll be surprised that when you read things out loud, it makes you slow down in your reading process. And you find the mistakes that you didn't realize were there. You're all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I don't like how that sounds. Or you get to a word, and since you're going slow enough, you actually see the right word that's there, not the word you think is there.
So you're doing that after you send it out to the editor?
No, that's
before. Okay, I got a little confused because we were talking about the editor. Okay.
So that's like 4 stages of editing before I even send it to the editor. Then I send it to the editor, and then I also have beta readers that are copy editors at heart, and so they read it for me and find mistakes, and they do great, because I have some that are just kind of like grammar Nazis. They may not understand story structure, which your editor needs to understand story structure. They may not understand like plot points and things like that. But they understand when there's a missing quote mark, or they understand when you've spelled like the word wrong or something, and everybody else has missed it throughout this whole process. So that happened too. And then this is a funny story. I was just telling Jamie this last night. When I uploaded to Amazon, in my ebook, they found 2 spelling mistakes. Glaring, like stood with 2 S's. So clearly it was a typo, but after all this process, there were still mistakes. And then I had to go back into Vellum, fix the mistakes, and upload everything else again. But, so that's my process. Did you have a question, Rhonda? I felt like you were trying to say something.
I did have a question. You kind of touched on it for just a second, but the question is, okay, I recently beta read for somebody, and we were supposed to catch typos and that sort of thing. And every single one of us who read that book missed this one particular word that was misspelled almost every time. So when your computer reads it to you, do they read it differently, or do they give you any clue?
Well, it depends on what the word is. Like, I think I know what you're talking about. It was a word that was acceptable spelled different ways, right? But they've gone back and forth, so they're not going to catch it. If it's a name, let's say Jennifer, my name Jennifer is spelled 1 N. But if somebody was writing about a character named Jennifer 1 N, and then a couple times I put it with 2 N's, the computer's just going to say Jennifer. They're not going to read it differently. So
Okay.
really just, I guess, prayerfully hope that somebody catches it. Somebody did
Okay.
catch that, right? That's how you guys found out, was somebody figured it out. So
Yeah, the writer after she got it back.
so
Well, I think that that's a good point, is that you can do all these steps and, you know, you may upload your book and get it for sale, and you get that critic or someone will send you a nice email and say, I found some errors in your book. Now, that is not the time to, like, you know, oh, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible representation of Christianity. It is not difficult to make corrections. You just upload the corrected. If it's an ebook, I believe Amazon sends the corrections, or not. Jennifer, do you know the answer to that?
ask that again.
If I were to find mistakes and upload new content for my ebook, would Amazon flip them out to people who had already purchased? Do you know?
I've heard that you can request that they do that, but they don't always do it.
Okay. But still is not the end of the world. And I was talking to my husband about this. Now, my husband is a reader, not a writer, although he's kind of catching the bug, because it's like, I used to write well. So anyway, that's just what happens when you live with a writer, I guess. So he is a reader, and he said he finds errors all the time in traditional publishing.
Oh,
The
yeah.
problem is that indies are held to such a high standard. Oh, you think that you can compete with us big whoop whoop publishers? And so some people come out guns a-blazing, and they're looking for those errors in Christian, or, well, yeah, I guess Christian, but in any self-published work. So it's really important that you become a very good self-editor. And I think all of these steps that Jennifer is talking about are important for you to learn comma placement and where quotes go, so that you don't have to pay for somebody to fix that stuff for you.
Agreed. And I think what you said is very important for us to talk about just really quickly, that yes, I agree that as self published authors, we are held to a higher standard because everybody's looking for mistakes. As Christian self-published authors, I think that it's increased, because the Christian community goes to the bookstore and they find a book published by Christian publishing houses like Tyndall and Bethany House, yada, yada, yada. And they expect that what they're going to pick up has been vetted, that they're not going to find anything that is does not match up with their Christian beliefs. A self-published author, people are like, a lot of times will snub, snub the self-published author, because they think that you couldn't get a contract with a publishing house. I don't want a contract with a publishing house. And they think that that you're putting out crap that wouldn't pass the bar, basically. So I think it's even worse for Christian self-published authors, that because people have like a higher expectation and they're looking for you to make mistakes. So.
Jamie, how does your technique differ from Jennifer's?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm pretty much a hot mess, and I'm rather chaotic in all areas of my life, which is fine. It is deep-seated issues that I have with authority. And so I cannot prescribe anything to myself without having a major rebellion on my hands. So I've also been not super consistent in my writing process. So that's not helpful either. But I'll tell you what it's looked like. And I will put a big asterisk next to it saying, this is all maybe going to change. So here's what happens. I write a story, and most of the time I am correcting as I go, because I tend to want to write as clean as possible on my first draft. That's not something that I really necessarily recommend to everybody, but I'm the kind of person where I will tire of even my own ideas so quickly that if I have to go back and really work and fix my draft, like, it will just, as I've realized, sit in the trunk, the virtual trunk, for 10 years, because I'm tired of that story. So I want the story to still be fresh and new to me, but come out as clean as possible. So I will take the time to fill in those X's or those capital words. It's just a totally different initial first draft crafting style than Jen does. And so when I go back to it now, I am rereading, and I will not do it the same day. Like Jen said, I need to put space between myself and the piece, and that space just varies. I'll go back to the piece and I'll read it as though I am editing somebody else's piece. So I have, I have a virtual hat some people might like to actually put on a hat that is like the editor hat. I'm wearing my editor hat now. So I'm not going to be super attached to, oh, adorable Marisol. She's so blah, blah, blah. If I got to kill her, I got to kill her. Do you know what I mean? And so I am like going through and fixing the sentences and kind of making everything feel a little better, and I'm watching for the typos and I'm watching for the quotes and stuff like that. And at that point, I send it off to somebody who I know who is not like, I don't have a content story structure person. I have like proofreaders. And then I will send it to a couple of friends who want to read my next story. And I say, when you read it, if anything sticks out at you, can you let me know? And then I'm ready to go. Because like Jen, I'm on a budget and I cannot pay even 1 cent per word. At the rate that I would like to publish, I would be so far in the hole before I'm selling books that I just cannot pay the price of a professional editor. Now, with that said, I don't think I'm having typo issues that are, I don't get people saying, oh my gosh, your book is riddled with errors and things like that. So I think I'm doing so far so good. Does that answer your question?
And I think it's important to point out too that you are not writing novels.
Yes,
that Jennifer is writing novels. You're writing short stories. Your stories tend to be less than 10,000 words, correct?
Not the two that I've published. They're upwards of 15,000. And the one I'm working on now is 20,000. I will say that my first draft of my nano novel, which is at about 50,000 words, is okay. So let me tell you about that process. So now that also was kind of like, so I don't have a novel process. Yep, you're right. Mm-hmm.
And your process is different because you're writing shorter work, is all I'm saying.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily short stories, but shorter work. But I was gonna say something too about I know what I want to say. I think it's important too that we mention that yes, I'm really encouraging you, everybody that's watching this, to get a professional edit or as close to it as possible. But if that's what's holding you up from publishing, then forget it. Like Jamie would have to wait a long time if she was going to pay somebody, because right now it's not financially in the picture. But Jamie is a very prolific writer. She writes a lot. She would go broke having a professional edit all the stuff she writes. But in contrast, Jamie works really, really, really hard to make sure that what she puts out is as near as perfect as possible. So that's the flip side of it. If you cannot afford a professional editor, then you have to work that much harder to make sure what you put out there is good. But don't let the fact that you don't have it professionally edited stop you from publishing, because you may never get published if it's that point.
And I would encourage everybody to stay away from inexpensive editors. Like, I think somebody who loves you and cares about you, like, I'll just say, for example, this is my husband's stepdad who is proofreading for me. Okay. He's invested in my success and he likes to read, and he's a retired guy and says, I enjoy doing this. I don't mind helping you out. And he works really hard to make sure all of my stuff is clean. Like, I'm not just sending it out there, not looked at by anybody. You see what I mean? So even though I'm not paying a professional, I'm still not just resting on my own eyeballs to catch everything. I'm still sending it past somebody who cares about me enough to at least see what they can see that's wrong with it. And as many people as you can find in your circle who will read and just say, yeah, I did notice that this or that was misspelled. And even if you're sending it to people who are just readers and not really writers, at least you know it's passing by them. So when the general public looks at it, you know what I mean? Like, writers read differently when they're editing than when they're reading, but readers read. And so if you're sending it to a reader and they're not catching all your stuff, you're probably okay for the market that you're trying to sell to. You're not trying to sell to people who edit books for a living and who are going to be like, this thing is just riddled with mistakes, right? You want to just get it good enough to where you're not going to be embarrassed, is how I feel.
And let's be honest, your first few books, when you look back at them, you're going to be like, that's just because you just improve. You just become a better writer.
Yeah.
Right. Tina, you've been gleaning some information, haven't you, from different places for your future edits?
I'm getting ready to edit. I'm just about done with my first draft of the novel that I'm writing, and I'm getting ready to go into an edit of a short story that goes with my novel. So I have been looking at different processes that different people use. And I actually wrote down a list. I have my little ultimate authorship planner here. And I have a list that I've written down of the process that I want to follow. So like Jamie and Jennifer, I'm going to rest. I have it in my calendar. I'm resting 30 days.
Mhm.
Actually, it's been more than 30 days since I've finished this story. So that's kind of redundant at this point.
You're resting from that novel. You're still writing. You're working on something else, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the editing that I'm starting in probably the middle of February is going to be on my short story about the dog in my novel. So while I'm resting from my novel, I'm going to be editing my short story. So the resting has already taken place. I haven't even looked at that for a couple months, so that's good. And then I'm going to go through chapter by chapter and look for plot issues, story structure issues. I'm not going to worry about the line edits right now. I'm at that point. I'm not going to worry about, the quotes and the commas and all that. I'm just looking for plot and story structure and character development kind of stuff. So I'm going to do that chapter by chapter until I'm done with that. And then I'm going to put it into Pro Writing Aid that Rhonda mentioned before. It's a program that I bought. And it's great. It'll tell you your grammar issues, your style issues. It'll tell you if you've repeated the same word like 50 times in one chapter, stuff like that. And so I'm going to use that as a tool to help me clean up, because it'll help me clean up my commas. And I have a bad habit of putting a period before I close the quotes. And that's another thing I did. On the next page, I wrote a list of my common things that I do wrong, so that when I'm going through, I can be looking for them. Like passive voice, adverbs. I love adverbs.
Don't we all?
So my novel might be a novella by the time I get done chopping all the adverbs. We'll see. So then after I run it through Pro Writing Aid, I'm gonna do what Jennifer talked about and have Word read it to me. And then after Word reads it to me, I'm gonna read it out loud. And then I'm going to ask a writing buddy to give it a quick read through for plot issues, character issues, story structure type stuff. And then I'm going to send it to an editor, which is probably not going to be a professional editor because I don't have the money. So that is the process that I have written down that I'm planning to follow.
How long do you anticipate the editing process for you?
I have given myself 2 months, and this is a short story, so I don't think it's going to take 2 months, but that's what I've allotted myself.
Okay. Jennifer, how long did it take you to edit your novella? Or did I say Jamie? I meant Jennifer.
Oh, you said Jennifer.
Okay.
I would say that the process before I send it off to the editor takes me about 2 weeks. And then the editor been kind of a crapshoot lately. It took him, I want to say, 2 to 3 weeks before we were done with that process with this novella. The novel he has now, it's been months, and so today is the do or die day. I've set a deadline for him. So
yes, and that's something that's interesting to talk about. So now, if you are going to your, stepdad, or you're going to a dear friend, and you're saying, Sister Mary Margaret, would you please check my writing for typos? You can't also then just be like, hurry up, Sister Mary Margaret, unless you approach them and you clearly say, I would like to publish this book on whatever date, right? And so do you think you could do this favor for me and have it back to me by blah, blah, blah? And just be really clear and casual about it and say, you know what? If you're too busy and you can't meet this deadline or whatever, no problem. We are still friends. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's really difficult too, because you're asking someone to do you a favor and yet you need them to hurry up. And so it's like a really difficult dance to do, isn't it, Jen?
right, but Jamie alluded to, having clear set guidelines is very, very important. Each other needs to know exactly what you expect, when you expect it by, and what the process of trading is going to be. So yeah, clear expectations is very, very important.
Okay.
Yeah, and if any of you are like the grammar person in your group, I would say that you could be a real blessing to some of your writing pals if you would offer like a trade. Like Jen said, you might find a cover designer in your group. You should just make it known what you're willing to do. And again, you then need to set some really clear guidelines, right? Like, I will take your 2,500 words, but I will warn you that if it's really riddled with errors, it's going to take me however long to get through it, right? So again, when you start would you do this for me, or I would like to do this for you, have clear expectations so that nobody is surprised and relationships can be maintained.
Well, those sound great, you guys. Any last thoughts?
I've
'Cause we have to
seen,
move on.
I had a first draft of my novel, and then I did a rewrite. And when I sent out the manuscript to be read by beta readers, I saw several very good documents online for expectations for your beta readers in
Ooh.
writing that you could send to them with the manuscript
Nice.
that they could refer back to and see, here are the bullet points. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm not looking for. So you can be really clear and that you don't have to rely on their memory to remember what you said.
That's a
Is
great
that something you could post on our webpage?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We'll count on you then. All right. If everybody's ready, we can move on to our writing.
Oh, I'm
Getting
excited.
it back time.
Sharing time.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started then. So speaking of editing, these that we're getting ready to read we took 15 minutes. We were given 5 words, and we were trying to fit all of those words into whatever we could write in 15 minutes. And edited? No, they're completely unedited. And so there is no criticism, constructive or otherwise here. It's all just good feedback. And we're
Encouragement.
just being raw and encouraging each other. Yes. So does anybody want to go first? Or Jamie, did you do a generator?
I didn't do a generator.
I'll rip the Band-Aid off and go first.
Yeah, Tina likes
All right.
to go first.
Sounds good.
Then I can get it over with.
Oh, should we read the words?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll read. I got them right
Okay.
here. I'll read them.
Okay.
Okay, so we had 5 words. Down dark alleys in the middle of the night was not Iris's idea of places she dreamed of traveling. Yet here she was, following a strange man in a cloak that reminded her of a Dracula costume. When she thought about how she got herself into this mess, it made her think of the cliche, truth is stranger than fiction. It had been just another day volunteering at St. Agnes's soup kitchen, except for the bitter cold temperatures outside that drove more than the usual traffic inside, searching for a way to stay warm. Hot soup, hot coffee, a warm dining hall, and what Iris hoped was a warm smile as she served them was just what they needed. It had been her intention to go to the grocery store after the dishes were done, the floor swept, and the lights turned out. However, circumstances being what they were, it didn't happen. First, the donation jar disappeared. That wasn't a big deal in and of itself. It happened occasionally. Usually, the offender did a grab and run and was gone. This time, she could hear the jingling of change from within the office just off the dining hall. How in the world anybody got in there with the door locked, she wasn't sure. Maybe they had an invisibility mutation and it simply floated through. Iris wondered what to do. She didn't want to open the door and confront whoever it was. They were probably desperate, and desperate men often did things they normally wouldn't. Is somebody there? She called. There was no answer. She picked up her cell and punched Fred's Facebook profile icon that she'd saved on her home screen. He worked as an advisor at the local community college and was only blocks away. He told her to go to her car and he would be right there. Iris grabbed her purse and keys, pulling on her winter gear, and headed for the stairs. But before she got there, the office door opened and the strangest man she'd ever seen walked out. He seemed as surprised as she was when he saw her. He hesitated, obviously sizing her up. Are you by yourself? He asked. No, there's somebody waiting for me outside, she lied. Can you get rid of them? No. Why would I? She asked. Because I believe you are the one. 3, 2, 1.
No!
Come on, how come you can't write 2,000 more words in that 15 minutes?
The timer went off.
Are you going to continue that?
I loved hot coffee, hot soup, like how you use that hot over and over. and then hopefully a warm smile. Like that was wonderful writing right there. And then you wrote that she had these tasks to do in the soup kitchen, but you didn't write a list of tasks that you did. You wrote after she had swept and mopped, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like it was so masterfully done. I can't believe you didn't have to sit there and be like, now how can I word this? Blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Amazing. Really good.
It
Thank
was
you.
so good.
I was
I-
impressed by how you used the word mutation. Because I'll be honest, I didn't use it because I couldn't figure out how to get in there. Like I was like, wow, she got it.
I have yet to decide if this is something that normally happens, like people have mutations, or not. We'll- if
I don't know
if I ever
anyone.
develop this, we'll
I don't
see.
know anyone with like an invisibility mutation, but I think mutations do like, yeah, sort of exist.
Yeah.
Really awesome. Rhonda, I feel like I trampled right over you. What were you going to say?
Oh, I enjoyed it. You're gonna make this into a short story, right?
Possibly.
I vote yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful work.
All right, Jennifer, you are next on my screen, so I am going to call on you.
All right. Well, I only used 3 of the words, so you have to bear with me. 'cause-
Well, you did 3 times as well as you and I did that one time when you used 0. So
Right?
good job.
All right. Okay. Was it your intention to control me? Because I promise you, William Caffey, I will be controlled by no man.
Oh.
Will laughed. When have I ever tried to control you? Controlling you would be about as successful as trying to herd cats. How about when you chopped my wood? Wood chopping? Is that what this is about? How on earth is doing a simple chore for you a sign that I'm trying to control you? You can't just walk into my yard without permission. You cannot make decisions for me. Decisions? Like the decision to chop some wood. Exactly. I'm sure you can see how offensive it all is. Will shook his head. I'm not the offender here. What is that supposed to mean? How have I offended? At every turn, Will's voice raised a decibel or two. You take every opportunity and circumstance to treat me harshly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't you? Will stepped closer to her so that he was looking directly down into her eyes.
Ooh.
Tell me, Pastor, how would you, tell me, Pastor, would you be having the same conversation if it were Jack Simmons who had snuck into your backyard? Phoebe blinked at him several times. I'm not sure. You can save it because we both know that you would not. You spit accusations at me of control and deceit. All the while you lavish hate and disgust on me. No, you wouldn't have treated John, or it's supposed to be Jack, sorry, or any other man in this town the way you are treating me. Will picked up his hat and swung open the door, turning angry eyes toward her as he did so. No, Phoebe Albright, no man will control you. How could they, when you are already so controlled by your own anger and unforgiveness that there isn't room for anything else? As the door slammed behind his departing figure, 3, 2.
What happened?
Oh no.
Oh,
So
Go
he's
ahead,
a good
Rhonda.
guy.
Mhm.
I just like him a lot. Oh, she needs to be whipped into shape.
Yes, finally
Mm.
someone is saying it, right, Rhonda?
Yes.
Yeah, Will, yeah.
Exactly.
Hit her again. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and you know that when he got close to her, it was all like, ooh, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Electric shocks between
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, very well done.
And
Yeah.
I really heard that Pastor Albright thing. Like, my husband is a pastor, and sometimes when he does something that I feel is out of character or is just irritating me, I'll go, okay, Pastor Bob, like that. Like to point out that his behavior is inconsistent with his title. So I really
That's
love
funny.
that, which
Yeah, you
doesn't happen hardly ever.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really well done because you don't even have to say that he said it. Like you don't have to have that adverb there because just
Mhm.
she did such a good job with the back and forth. Really well done.
Yep.
Yay.
That was fantastic.
I appreciate hearing that because I don't know whose point of view this is from. I don't know if you could tell, but I wrote it with no point of view so that I could figure out where I'm going to fit it into the story. I think I know where it's going, and I do not have enough of Will's point of view, so I think this is going to end up being his point of view, but I wasn't for sure.
Oh, that's so good because he wanted simultaneously to kiss her and smack her. Like you could say
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Although part of me wants to be Phoebe so I can feel the, oh, he's close to me. Oh, so I don't know. I mean, you got
I
a big
think-
decision to make there.
Yeah, I think I have enough of her starting to feel that. Like, I need to have more from his
Mm-hmm.
perspective. And I would
Mhm.
really like to see inside his head angry at
Mhm.
her because
Yeah.
she is being ridiculous. And I mean, I get where she's coming from. She's a woman in the 1910s, that's almost 1920s, trying to live in a man's world, but she's going overboard with it. So I just really want to be inside because we love Will. He is very laid back and he is, you know, kind of like puts up with a lot of crap, but I think it's time that he starts to like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because we love him because he's also like a man. You know what I mean? You want him to be a
Mhm.
man.
Yeah, when I
Mhm.
first wrote this book, I feel like I emasculated him a lot because in my mind, Will is very he's just very good-hearted and still handsome and still manly, but I was not writing him that way. I was writing him, I feel like, just not strong enough. And so this another scene that we see, and it is from Phoebe's perspective, it has to be the way that everything happens, is they get in a fight because she should have let him walk her home, and she wouldn't, and she ends up in a not safe situation with wildlife in the UP.
Mm.
So
Mm.
so I felt like I need a scene that is from his perspective, starting to show the frustration. So,
Well, it was
Mhm.
great, especially for
Yeah.
just a 15-minute sprint. Like, amazing. Really good.
Right.
Thanks.
And I just want to point out too, you were talking about readers and editing and how a reader reads and an editor edits. I was so caught up in the story as a reader or a listener that I did not even notice the point of view or the lack of one. So
Awesome.
just a good example of that.
Yeah, I didn't
Mhm.
either.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
So,
Appreciate
all
it.
right.
Thanks for the feedback, guys. Appreciate it a lot.
Jamie, what do you have for us?
Okay, here we go. If
How many words
only
did you get? Sorry.
300-ish.
No, I meant of the 5. I'm just curious.
I think
Oh.
they're all in here.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. If only, okay, I took care of 2 of them right away, just so you know. Surprise. Okay. If only we could identify the intention of the offender. Burke lifted the corpse with the toe of his boot, giving me access with my flashlight. It was hardly protocol from the time before the meltdown, but we were long past the days of preserving the crime scene. In my early days on the force, we wouldn't allow anyone, under any circumstance, come near the scene until forensics had done their thing. But this was a new world, and in these post-meltdown days, we worked against the clock, poking and prodding as much as we dared, risking contamination for the sake of solving cases. No sign of the F1 mutation, I say. Burke lets the body fall back to the ground. I turn my light back to the face. We are silent. I wonder if Burke is praying the way I feel I should be. Let's cover her up, I say. She'll be dust in 5 minutes. I don't want to use our last sposy on a stiff so far outside of town. Still, cover her. He fetches the sposy out of the trunk and flaps it open. The wind catches it and helps him out. Burke once again uses his steel toe to heave-ho the girl and uses the weight of her feet to hold down his end of the disposable blanket. I move the rock over the end closest to her right shoulder. My phone rings. Peters, I say. With the girl covered, there is now nowhere else to look but the barren field behind the big fence, where sparse grass bends low and whispers to the sand. Sir, we have a lead on the girl's ID, Kendra's voice says. What have you got? Minette Parker, college girl, attended St. Augustine. Her last known was the office of her academic advisor. She was failing out of school. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe you got that much into 300 words.
It is, let me see. I don't know how many were. 311.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that's a difference.
Those extra 11 words.
I'm seriously not happy with what you wrote because I know there's no more. Like I
Mm.
seriously am like frustrated because I want to read more. Like what a great
Mhm.
like I know we were talking about apocalyptic things at the beginning
Mhm.
of the episode, and like you just use that in your writing, and it's just like, why will her body disintegrate? You know, and what in the world's
Mhm.
going on, and what is this disease? And just wow, so good, Jamie. How do you
Thank
do
you.
that?
Did you catch with the blanket that it was also going to
Disposable.
disintegrate? Because I call it a sposy. Like, did it work?
I didn't know what a sposy was, but
Yeah.
then when you said disposable blanket, I'm like, ah. So
Great.
yeah,
Great.
that
So
worked
like
really
that
well.
worked. Awesome.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's what I wondered. Because I do like this premise. This is getting tucked away somewhere to become
So,
more
can I ask you, did the words inspire you to go in that direction?
mutation. Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely mutation. And again, I really didn't want to go this way because I really thought with the word offender, it was going to be a lot of like, there's a crime, there's an offender, you know what I mean? But it just was the way to go, I thought. So.
Well, I missed the beginning because I had some internet issues, but what I heard was awesome.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. I really enjoyed writing that. I like these people, and I don't even know who they are. Like, I mean, they're new. They're new people. They were just born 20 minutes ago, even though they're like overly hard-boiled and everything.
Yeah.
Fun.
All right. So.
All right. You guys ready?
Rhonda, what do you got for us?
I probably only have 100 words if I have that. I just was not, this polar vortex is in my brain today. I actually had not really a nightmare, but I had a little dream last night that I used polar vortex, that phrase, like 80 times during the podcast today, just because I couldn't get it out of my mind. So.
Well, it's a really big deal. And also, maybe we should take a minute right now and just say every word that a writer puts, it's a hard-won word. Like you are battling pull on your time, pulls commitments everywhere that you have on you, pulls on your self-confidence, and pulls just on like the world overwhelming you. So any word that you get out, that's hard-won, and you should celebrate it, whether it's 100 or 300 or 1,000.
Amen.
That's true. That's true.
Preach it.
All right, Rhonda, lay it on us.
Okay, so this is, I decided a while ago that I was going to use all of these as an inspiration for the next book in the series. And so I wasn't sure how I was going to fit these words into it. And I think I only got 3 of them. But anyway, all right. I pick up the lumpy purple ball and slowly turn it so I can see it from all angles. What kind of mutation is this? Does it taste like grapes? Sniffing it lends no clue to the flavor. When I spoke my new healthy eating intentions aloud at Rosie's the other day, more people heard me than I thought my whisper warranted. Standing in my kitchen is one of those well-meaning busybodies right now. She's looking at me with a huge smile and expectant look on her face. She slides the basket closer to me. I grew a whole bunch of these this year. It tastes just like cauliflower, but it's purple. Oh, joy. She reaches into her basket and pulls out another strangely colored vegetable, but this one is the color of macaroni and cheese, the kind with the fluorescent cheese, which is my favorite. I'm hopeful about this one. She must have mistaken the look on my face because my self-appointed health advisor neighbor's face beams with pride. This one is a mix between cauliflower and broccoli. She might as well have stabbed me in the back with her trowel. I'm not hungry anymore, but I peek into her basket hoping to find one of those delicious coffee cakes she used to bring to my mom's kitchen when I was little. No such luck. Honey, why don't we cut up one of these and you can sample them after coffee? We can gossip like your mom and I used to. The end.
Yay!
I love it.
She might as well stab me in the back with her trowel. You're hoping for mac and cheese and get mutated
And
cauliflower.
coffee cake.
Aww.
The
How
bad news is I want coffee cake now.
Oh, I know. I can just smell the cinnamon.
The thing is, Rhonda, you write like the HE double hockey sticks that everybody is trying to escape, like the small town, everybody in your business, and you write it so adeptly. Like we totally know this situation in just those few words. It's like really good. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It's very nice. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, we're done with this. So let's talk about our goals. Let's be accountable to each other for a minute. So, who wants to go first? Let's go Tina first. What are your goals for the week?
Well, my goals for I have this goal to finish my first draft of my novel by the end of February, but I think that I'm on track for possibly being done the first week of February. And so that's my major goal, is to just get those words in, but in the seat, write it. And I'm also preparing my mind for what's coming next. So the editing of my short story and what I'm going to do for our writing sprint so that keep my brain glowing and I'm still writing. I've found some magazines that are looking for submissions, and I'm going to look at what they're looking for, and I'm going to try to write something during those writing sprints that I can use as a submission. So that's my plan.
Here's me just trying to nail you down a little bit, because like hopefully you can say, I will do blank. And then we can come back to you and say, well, did you do blank? But if you say, I'm going to write a few or I'm going to write some, can you give us something really targeted? Like I am going to have written 6,000 words and 1 short story by Tuesday or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that it can be clearly stated so we can then hold you accountable.
Right. Well, I've been averaging 1,400 words a day in those writing sprints, and I figured that out. And so, but the first Saturday of February, not this Saturday, next Saturday. So that first weekend of February, full weekend of February, I'll be done. I'll have 80,000 words written on my novel.
Awesome.
And then I want to go right into editing the Chugiak story. And that's when I'll start using at least the first sprint of the day to write something for submission.
Awesome.
Does that help?
Well, I mean, so when we get back together with you next week, our question for you is, did you fill in the blank? What is it that we're going to ask you? Did you?
My 1,400 word a day momentum.
Gotcha. Awesome.
And are we going to ask you if you've been submitting?
I'm not I have submitted 2 things so far, but if there's going to be a process I'm going to have to go through between the writing sprints and the polishing and all that. So I'm going to have to fill you in on that when it comes.
Great.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so Jamie, what are you doing?
Okay, so originally I had wanted to have my book 3 shaped up and ready to go to my proofreader very soon because I really wanted to launch the book on the 14th of February. And I only picked that day because it was roughly 30 days from when I had published the other one. And it's a romantic story. And so I'm like, okay, February 14th. But as I got into doing this editing, it has gotten a little murkier than I expected. And so I think I'm going to have to delay my release date. So that's a bummer that I'm not going to meet that goal, but I am staying on top of everything. And I do want it to be within 45 days of the 11th, which is January 11th, which was my launch of my book 2. So I could delay that to the 28th. So I can now say I will go live on the 28th of February. So in order for that to happen, I need to be done with my edits probably by the 14th, which means I would need to be at least halfway through by the next time we get together. So I'm going to say I will be at least halfway through my edits of my book 3 by the next time we have a podcast. And then I will also say that I will continue writing. I've been writing 1,000 words a day minimum, with the exception of Sunday. On Sunday, I do extra editing. I look at things like ads. I play around with covers and things like that. So Sunday, I do still work. I just don't count my words. I'm usually writing, but so I'm at 6,000 words a week, and I will maintain that as a commitment.
Awesome.
What about you, Rhonda? Jen?
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, me? Okay. Well, right now I am still writing every day. So one of my goals for this week is just to show up for office hours every day and make sure that I'm writing something. What I am writing is I'm working on Phoebe's story. Now, my goal for Phoebe is to be done I was supposed to be done outlining this month, re-outlining, and then finished rewriting the parts to be rewritten, new writings by the end of February, so that Phoebe is done, ready to be put on the shelf for a month.
So you're a little ahead because your outline is totally done, which
Yes.
You weren't even due to have done until today, and you've been rewriting already.
Yeah,
good job.
I'm all the way through to here.
Perfect.
So the first act is done. I'm almost halfway through the second act. So I'm ahead of the game for that. So by next week, I will just continue that. I will just, it's not like I said discontinue, just continue that. And then I should be able to have a proof of my novel already in hand and have approved the copies for Searching for Anna. And by next Thursday, I should be able to tell you when the actual release date is. I know in my heart when I'm going to, but before I announce it out loud to the masses, I want to make sure I have that proof in my hand.
Well, that's part of goal setting too, is you really want to make sure it's a goal that you think is attainable. So good job.
Right. Yep. And also those are very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to be very specific so that Jamie doesn't make me redo it. Like she
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it is very specific because I think you were trying to allude to, Rhonda, is I've been using my Bujo
Yes.
very successfully, and I have I'm working on a rough draft for this. I don't want to actually put anything in my mapping my releases until like I know for sure, but I've been mapping out what's going to happen every month on every novel, like when I start a new novel, and I follow that process through, and everything overlaps: the writing, the editing, the designing, the book cover, all that stuff. So yeah, so it is pretty specific because I'm actually making myself be specific. So
Well, good. Good. That's very good.
how about you,
All right.
Rhonda?
Okay, so I gave myself permission to not write on my novella while I was in Florida. A, because I knew I wouldn't get around to it anyway, and B, because I had just finished the first draft of it, which is basically a really exploded outline of the novel. And so I want to, probably not by next Thursday. See, my goals aren't specific. I should have been more specific. The struggle I'm having right now is that I have to make a decision whether I want to include all the stuff I want to include and turn this into a novel, because that'll push everything so much farther back than my original intention. But these people, like you were saying earlier, Jamie, these people have come to life. And I feel like I'm doing them a disservice by not telling everything that needs to be told about them. So by next week, I will definitely have made the decision whether I'm going to maybe make multiple novellas on this one couple, or if I'm just going to throw
To
out
flesh it
all the
out,
other.
maybe, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because there's just so much I want to say.
Well, there's
But-
an interesting thing that might help you as you ruminate. Like you can think about your story, okay? And you want to be sure that you don't end up with what Jennifer had with Phoebe because of all of these fun things that they could be often doing and experiencing. Like, didn't you say you had them fly fishing or something like that,
Oh
Jen?
yeah, salmon fishing.
Salmon fishing.
It's a great scene. It
Yeah.
really is, but not necessary.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you can tell enough that they're real to us but make us still yearn and want for more and beg you to write that next thing, I
Mhm.
think that that's better than giving it all to us
Mhm.
and making it feel super satisfying. I think that especially people who are reading a romance want to feel some yearning at the end and wish that they could have more, right?
Mhm.
And so you're probably on the right track if you want to tell us more because they're real to you,
Mhm.
which means they're going to be real to us. So that's just something.
Mhm.
Anyway, my point to chew on is just it still has to have a story, and you
Mhm.
don't want to go pinging off on all of these things so that you lose your story. If the story is told, then the story is done. Just because it might be interesting to know that he loves his car and waxes it every Saturday, do we need to know that for your story to like
Mhm.
do? Anyway, that's just
Right.
stuff for you to chew on.
Yeah. Well, actually, that is really helpful.
Good.
See, I'm vacillating again.
I know. I
Anyway.
know.
Here's the
But it's
key.
only a decision that you can make. It's your story to
Mhm.
tell. And that's why, I don't write short because
Mhm.
I think to myself, well, this book only can be 35,000 words. I
Mhm.
write short because I'm done with my story at 35,000 words and I don't
Right.
feel like there's more that I still have to say. If
Mhm.
your story is not told in however many thousands of words, then you need to keep going. And if it is, then you're done.
Yeah.
All right, here's a point I would like to make too. Every chapter needs to have a purpose and not just for us to like see them going down on an adventure. And that's why I
Mhm.
was able to cut so much out of my original Phoebe, because I'm like, okay, what is the purpose of the chapter? A lot of them had a purpose, but I was able to like condense it. So for example, there's okay, so there's a character that his girlfriend breaks up with her. Like, I want you to fall in love with this character and feel bad for him, but there's also a deeper purpose to that story, that chapter. So when you think about these things that you want to add and it's going to make it
Mhm.
longer, does it help us give us insight into the character that we need for your overall story? Does it help move the story along? If it doesn't do those two things, if it's just added like, oh, I just really like this story, then it's time to cut it. But if it does one of those two things, if it moves the story along or it gives us insight to the character that we need, that will change our opinion or will help us to follow through the story, then you need to write it.
It's
Okay,
like that
now-
Marie Kondo method. You have to love it. No, just kidding. You have
La
to
la 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 la
purpose
la.
or-
Does it spark joy?
No.
I'm so
No,
tired of hearing about her. I don't even
Yeah.
know who she is.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, see, Jen, when I decided that my first copy was done, I had gone through and made sure that all those needed to be in there. And now I want to add more so I don't know. So whatever I decide by next week is going to be my final decision, and I will have made progress to whatever I'm
You
doing.
and I
Ooh.
do a hangout together afterwards or later
Yeah.
tonight or something, and let's
Mhm.
talk about the
Mhm.
chapters you're thinking about. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's good to have a sounding board, and we can talk about that. How about
Okay.
it
Oh, and
sounds
that's
to
the
me
kind
like
of
you?
I love talking about that kind of stuff. Hooray.
No, you're not invited.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Jamie, we can have our own, and we're going to write a novel about them.
Yeah. And we'll have snacks.
Right.
We'll have keto snacks.
Oh,
But all
you did
joking
not
aside,
cut me at all for that. Ugh.
I don't want to go on a huge rabbit trail,
Yeah.
but again, back to searching for Anna. Searching for Anna would not be really where it is today and as good as it was if I wasn't trapped in a car with Jamie and Tina for 3.5 hours driving to Rhonda's house her cabin up north, her house up north on the lake. And they were so gracious and let me bounce ideas off them, and we plotted it, we talked about it, and it sometimes helps to have another person on the outside to help you through that process. And I would love to do that with you.
Yeah.
Although
So
I am
excited
still
about it.
disappointed the creepy dolls didn't make it.
I
Make
was
it a
I was
story.
going to ask about that, but
You
yeah.
have to come to the postcast if you want to hear about the creepy dolls, because we don't have
Yeah.
time to talk about it.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to end this here. Thank you for sticking around for it. We are going to head to the postcast, and that is where there is exclusive content that is only available to our Patreon subscribers. So if you're not yet one of those, then click the link below, and you will be granted exclusive access to our postcast. And don't forget to sign up for our emails, and you will never miss an episode, and you will get some great freebies, like the one that Tina is going to be posting today. So this concludes our Christian Indie Writers podcast. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.